5:30 a.m. Let's be the kid.
What is up, guys? It is week 2 with the Fantasy First Rounders Live. As always, with me, my boys, Real Ryan Hicks and at BWit24 down here, Billy the Dragon.
What's up, man?
Are we ready for week 2? I mean, week 1 was a crazy week. If you were starting Saquon, if you started Mike Evans, if you started Mike Gesicki, you were having a bad week. But if you started Mixon, if you started DeAndre Hopkins, if you started Derek Carr, you had a pretty solid week, right, boys? I mean, I didn't know what to think of some of it.
Typical week 1. All kinds of things out of left field. Some breakout guys, some guys we were seeing fill in, like Tyson Williams in Baltimore. You know, some really interesting stuff, and some guys really went boom week 1. And don't panic and sell your whole team yet, everybody. It'll be all right.
Absolutely. Well, good news is we do have a little update. Some of those players that might have helped you, some of them might have hurt you week 1 in the St. Jude Bowl. Ryan, tell them really quick what happened in week 1 for the St. Jude Bowl here. Who won? Who lost? What's happening?
Right. Well, I lost. I had a decent week, but I lost. It wasn't the greatest. But we want to go through the best teams from each division real quick. Talking about high scores, the high scores is also going to be the division leader. So this week we're just doing one shout out per division. But next week we'll shout out both the high scores and the division leaders. So Peyton Manning division, my division. We got Lineup Showdown, who's also doing a very cool thing with it's like a eliminator for fantasy, where you pick a guy and you can't use him again the rest of the year, and you have to make lineups. I'm in second place in that. But he had a 181.38. Then we have Reggie Wayne with FFL Guru, a 178.36. Then we have CEH Dennington 12, Good Old Boys FF. There we go, guys. 185.06. Nice job, Derek. Luke Jokel, we have GD Jesus 519 or New York Wolfpack at 189.96. These are some pretty good scores. I mean, none of us got these scores this week. And then we have Nuke with Goldie the Gaffer, a 195.14. That's a really good score. Then we have Von Miller. This is where we had a couple teams get over 200. Mark L87 at 202.68. That is a heck of a good score, Mark. Not the highest, though. We'll get to that in a second. Then we have Famous Jameis, Queen Bees, our very own Chris Pinto's wife, Bryn. Shout out. Well done, Bryn, a 185.04. Then we have Super Mariota, the top score from any division. Eric S944 with a 211.6. What a week, Eric. Well done. 211.6. You are the big dog in the St. Jude Bowl week 1. Then we move on to Saquads. We have Nomad 1600 at 187.42. Last but not least, Killer Kyler, Desperados 3 with a 196.1. That is my Uncle Greg. Nice job, Greg. There we are.
Perfect sleeper ID for the Killer Kyler division. Desperado. That's beautiful.
Oh,
yeah.
That's his fantasy name in our home league.
Yeah.
But yeah, great job, guys. What an awesome week 1. Wish I could have said I won. I did not. I should have. But I'm having a talk with my guys this week. We'll be back on it next week.
I'm off to a way better start than I was last year. So we'll see how it goes.
Hey, I'm glad it's working for somebody. Yeah. I'm glad it's working for somebody. I struggled last week. What did I have? The second lowest score, right? I got crushed. Saquon not showing up. Michael Pittman not showing up. Mike Gesicki not showing up. Elijah Moore not showing up. Nobody on my team wanted to show up week 1. But week 2,
that was rough.
We'll have it back.
Still love that team.
Exactly. I think it's a fun one. I think we still got a shot. We got a lot of season left.
Oh, yeah. Week 1, baby. It's just week 1.
But with that being said, we're going to move it into week 2. We're going to kick it right off because we have a lot to cover as always early in the year here. We're going to start off with the Thursday night game here. We have the Giants 0-1 going into Washington to play the football team, drenching their fans in sewage. Also 0-1. Washington favored -3, over under a 40.5 here. This one's a bit of an interesting one. Denver beating up on the Giants last week. Washington I wouldn't say getting spanked by the Chargers, but 20-16, they just couldn't answer for Herbert at the end of that game. I mean, obviously, we're hoping that Saquon comes back. We're hoping that Herbert's able to snap off a little bit. He didn't look fantastic last week. But Ryan, where are you starting on this one? Who are you looking to play?
Not a lot of guys in this game. I'm not gonna lie. I think that last week for the Giants was some week 1 jitters. You look at a lot of those guys didn't play in the preseason. Look at Green Bay, what happened there. Saquon didn't really play in the preseason, so I want to see. They also got to give him more touches, guys. Realistically, you got to get him going. I understand the snap count situation, but it just wasn't enough for him to ever get anything going. They need to do that. It just opens their offense back up. Also, is Evan Ingram going to play? I think one of you guys were saying that he's leaning towards playing. I think that's just good for their offense, just another weapon to add. But these are 2 good defenses. I like Washington's defense obviously much better, but I'm avoiding this in DFS. It's going to be low scoring, but we're going to see a better Giants team than we did in week 1. And so I'm going to lean the Giants with the points. And I actually think the money line bet for the Giants and the upset is interesting. I'm not necessarily certain I'd put a lot on it, but that's where I'm leaning. Is I think the Giants could shock. I think Washington's going to be fine. Their defense is good, and their offense is under Heineke is better, but we'll see about this one. This was an interesting game for me. I want to see if the Giants can rebound from a really disappointing week 1.
Yeah, very interesting for me too. I'm very excited to see Taylor Heineke take over that huddle for the Washington football team. I really liked his performance in the playoffs. It showed me a lot of guts. It's something that Ron Rivera really admires in a young kid out there. And he's not young. He's 28 and he's been around a little while, actually, kind of coming into his own as of late. But just looking at this game from a fantasy standpoint, I do have Saquon concerns. I'm wondering, is he actually healthy and ready to be back? I understand the questionable tag coming in, but maybe it's 2 games in 5 days to start the year kind of thing where they want to be cautious. I'm not sure. But right now, I didn't see anything that made me believe that he's back and ready to go. So I am a little bit concerned, short-term concerns. Long-term, season-long, hey, I'm okay waiting a couple weeks on Saquon. A guy with that kind of workload, you really kind of expect to miss a game or 2 along the way. Anyway, we might as well get him out of the way now, right? So Sterling Shepard, I really like what he did last week. Emerged as kind of the wide receiver 1, the number 1 target in this offense, a guy I liked coming into the year, kind of just showing up. And I think this team's only going to continue to get better. But one thing we talked about Evan Ingram a second ago, I just looked at Fantasy Pros. I thought I saw something. He has been ruled out, so that's a little bit of a concern as well. Mm-hmm. Another big piece of this offense, a guy that's heavily targeted in this offense. So I don't know. I want to see him back. Kenny Golladay showed kind of a glimpse or 2 of being that number 1 guy. Just didn't really put together a humongous stat day, but he was kind of falling late in the year in draft, so not necessarily concerned likely. But keep starting him. Keep playing your guys that you drafted high to be starters. This is a divisional matchup. Yeah, Washington's defense is very good. However, these games get crazy. 2 young teams. You never know what could happen at the end of the game. So I really like Washington. The skill player situation with Heineke. Definitely looking forward to see McLaurin get back going. We've been talking about him amongst ourselves, and really kind of was a little bit of a bust in week 1. So, and I really need some Gibson in a lot of places. I have a lot of Antonio Gibson. He was lasting too long in the second round. So for me, this game, I'm taking the Washington football team and the under, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to be a tight game. Every NFC East game, every divisional game is always tight. So I'm definitely taking the under. I think it'll be a little bit more of a defensive game. And with that, I'm a little hesitant to start a lot of these guys, right? I think with Saquon in a PPR league, I would still have interest in it. Obviously, with where you drafted him, you want to play him, even with him being questionable. Almost seems like he's more on a snap count than anything. Maybe they're going to work him into the season fully, but with that being said, they don't have a true running back 2 there that's going to really scare me from taking long-term snaps from him. So again, Saquon, I don't have big concerns. The receivers in New York, I'd be okay with starting. You obviously have Daniel Jones. Washington, I'm a little more cautious because I don't know what their offense looks like with Taylor Heineke. Obviously, we've only seen 1 playoff game, right? Looked great, but I don't know who his preferences are here. Is it Scary Terry? Is it one of the young guys like De'Ami Brown? Adam Humphries is there now. Not quite sure, but I do think start the Washington defense. I think that they're going to have a bit of a game. Other than that, I'm not starting Heineke this week. I can tell you that much. Give him a week or 2 before you put him in, even as a QB2. But with that, we're going to – yeah, exactly. But with that, we'll take it into the second matchup for this week. Kind of an interesting one, a little bit of a surprise on the spread. So we got Bengals 1-0 going into Chicago to play the Bears. Bears are 0-1, but are favored with a 2.5-point spread. If I'm not mistaken, guys, home field advantage is a 3-point favorite, right? Automatically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
technically, the Bengals are favored by a half, but are the away team.
Yeah.
So it's a real close one here. We talked about this a little before the show. I mean, with Andy Dalton starting, it makes sense. If Justin Fields is starting, does it automatically become Bears are the favorite in this one? And what does that do to an over-under if he gets some serious playing time? Obviously, it's only a matter of time, right? Billy, what do you think on these guys?
Yeah, so just to start with the Bengals coming into Chicago, I was very impressed with them against the Minnesota Vikings last week. That's one of those games that you win and you're like, okay, hey, they're starting to put it together. The offensive line concerns weren't necessarily there. Joe Burrow didn't have an incredible day, but it was an efficient day. I think he was like 20 out of 27, a couple touchdowns, and really got going with Jamar Chase. He caught a long one, and Higgins also got a couple red zone looks. So I liked what I saw to them. Joe Mixon really being the catalyst and led the way and really had a great game being the veteran leader on that offense. So this is a game where I think the Bears might be on their heels and the Bengals might have a lot more confidence than we really thought they would going into this matchup into week 2. I like the Bengals at minus 2.5 because I think they're going to win this game. And I do like the over because ultimately I think Justin Fields gets the end of this game probably sometime near the end of the first half and turns into a bit of a shootout just for fun. I was also very impressed on the Bears side about David Montgomery putting up 100 yards on the Rams last week, something I wasn't expecting. Typical, tough matchup for a back that isn't necessarily that great of a playmaker. So David Montgomery really picking up where he left off in 2019 or 2020, I'm sorry, in a great way. And one thing, though, he only had one reception. A little bit of a concern. Damian Williams had 4. But like I said, there's zero reason to believe Dalton continues for the Bears. So I think they let the kid play, and that will give a boost to your Bears. Mooney, A-Rob, and David Montgomery as well as soon as the kid gets in there and spices this offense up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously big on A-Rob. Every week you could possibly start him. I think whether it's Dalton or Fields, he's still going to be out there making some amount of difference. Obviously, last week, 6 receptions, only 35 yards. But that's in your average PPR league, still 9.5 points. It's serviceable, not ideal. Obviously, Bengals defense a little bit worse than the Rams defense, so that's going to help him out a bit. So definitely in on Allen Robinson, David Montgomery. I think last week's showing against that D-line, I'm pretty satisfied with putting him in and week out. Cole Kmet, another one that I definitely want in on pretty much any league possible. 5 receptions, 42 yards last week. Again, right around that 9.2 yards, points last week. Both pretty big for me. Marquise Goodwin, the deep threat. I'm not into it just because I don't know how long it's going to be until he's hurt. He's that Deshaun Jackson type. We've said it time and time again. How many weeks is he really going to be serviceable? 2 or 3 before he tweaks something and he's not out there at full strength. On the Bengals, Joe Burrow definitely looks strong, 20 for 27, like you said, Billy, 2 touchdowns. The big thing, though, Jamar Chase evidently did not have trouble catching the ball. Those not having the white lines didn't bother him too much. 5 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. You averaged 20.2 yards per catch. I mean, those are pretty monster numbers for a rookie wide receiver in the first game. I wouldn't have concerns about putting him in, even, the Bears the Bears are not the greatest defense in the world. Definitely not going to be able to stop Chase, Higgins, Boyd, so on, so forth, this entire Bengals squad, unless they're able to put pressure on because there's no O-line. Ryan?
I mean, it's possible. I am also shocked that the Bears are favored. I'm going to lean the Bengals, and I'll lean the over. I'm all in on Burrow. As long as he stays healthy and remains a very relevant fantasy quarterback, I think it's hard to know which wide receiver I want to target against this Bears team. For me, I think you can justify any of them, but on the other side of the ball, it's Robinson and Montgomery 100% go. Interested in them in DFS options. Like, they're not going to be able to stop Robinson. He's going to have a huge day. And Montgomery, what he just did to the Rams, the Bengals, they're in for a day from Montgomery. It's going to be a high-scoring game, definitely the over. You have any last words on this particular game?
Nah, take us off, man.
Let's move on to the Texans and Browns. We have the over-under on this one is 48, and you have the Browns favored by 12.5. Like, that's a pretty big spread. One that I'm very comfortable saying I'm taking the Browns and I'm taking the over. Nick Chubb is probably the RB1 this week. I think it's really, you saw what he did last week, 5.53 yards per carry. He only had 15 carries. So that is really impressive to me. But Hunt, I also think, remains a top 10 option this week. Honestly, he's a really interesting one on DFS because of his price point. Cleveland's going to shove it down Houston's throat. I like Jarvis with no Odell, but not like a ton. Not more so in like a safe play than a tournament. For the Texans, I'm always liking Brandon Cooks. I think he's relevant every week, no matter who they're playing. And I've got an eye on Pharaoh Brown moving forward. Maybe not this week, but he flashed some week one stuff where I saw some serious upside in his game, and I think he could emerge as the tight end to own there. Maybe not so much for this year, but like dynasty moving forward. He looked quite athletic in the small flashes that I got to see him in. Like his touchdown catch was very impressive. He looked good. I thought he was a receiver. I honestly thought it was Nico Collins that caught that touchdown as I switched over on Red Zone. I said, whoa, which receiver was that? And that was Pharaoh Brown. And it made me go, okay. So I was looking at some Pharaoh Brown stuff from that game, and he does look fluid. He looks athletic. That's a guy I'm interested in moving forward, but maybe not yet.
Yeah, the Texans are really the surprise 1-0 team. You kind of didn't really expect them to spoil Trevor Lawrence's debut for the Jaguars, but it looks like they're going to have a serviceable big three from a fantasy standpoint with Mark Ingram in the backfield, 26 carries, 27 carries or something. That's a number that if you're getting that kind of workload, that's a guy that you can feel comfortable plugging into a flex spot any week that you might need him. And as far as the rest of the game, it really went pretty well for him. Ty God played really well, throwing the ball down the field. Brandon Cooks winning some jump balls and had really a kind of a big day. And it really didn't even look like they were kind of putting it together until later in the game. So I think they're going to kind of get going. They played David Johnson at wide receiver in the red zone. That was kind of interesting. Obviously, he's probably one of their better receiving options. It just looks like these guys are going to be a hodgepodge of guys all getting to do what they do well. And I think that they're actually going to play a little bit better football than we expect. I mean, Tyrod Taylor, we've seen him play well just about everywhere he's been in recent memory. So him getting this nod in Houston really just kind of gives him another opportunity to showcase, that he actually can play a little bit of ball. But Chubb is incredible, Ryan, like you said. Just effortlessly tore the Chiefs apart last week. His touchdown, he walked in from 25 yards away. I don't even think he actually hit full speed. But yeah, Mark Ingram did look good, Scott Davis. He looked incredible. I mean, well, he looked good. I wouldn't say incredible, but
Better than I expected, yeah.
Yeah, that workload was definitely bigger than I was expecting him to get. But Chubb, yeah, had an incredible day. This matchup is just mouth-watering for Chubb. And I ultimately, like you said, Ryan, I think Kareem Hunt's a guy that you want to be starting in your flex this week as well, because as this lead starts to get out of hand, they're not going to leave Chubb in this game. You just can't risk an injury to that guy in week 2. So I expect them to kind of heed some of that workload to Kareem Hunt. And he did look good when he played last week, but didn't have a very big impact on the game as far as the workload is concerned. Baker's poised. He looked good. I'm impressed. They just got Mahomes last week. And, to me, there's a big impact with OBJ not being on the field. We're expecting these guys to kind of take that next step. And really, maybe that was the guy they were missing against Kansas City this last week. But I'm going to take the points, 12.5, with Houston. That's a lot of points to win by. Garbage time, sometimes 2 touchdowns is a lot in the NFL. So I'll take the over as well, as I think the Texans score some points late in this game.
Yeah, I'm going to start off here, Tyrod Taylor, right? Efficient quarterback. That's one of the things that we've heard for years about him. He doesn't make big mistakes. He's not turning the ball over a lot. He's not going to make a poor pass. He's going to put balls in the right place more often than not. Doesn't mean I'm going to start him in fantasy, but if you're really in a pinch, maybe not this week, but going forward could be a viable option as a streaming QB2 or Superflex. Mark Ingram, though, talking about how he looked good, I don't think it's as much that he looked good as he was force-fed the ball. Looking at his numbers, 26 carries, 85 yards, and a touchdown. He was averaging 3.3 yards per carry on 26 touches. I mean, hey, volume speaks loud, right? So that's definitely going to help him, but I think that he's going to be limited because that offensive line does not block well. So you're really going to need him to have 25 plus touches a game for him to be viable as a flex, and then touchdown to make him RB2 option. Yeah, you're right. They are feeding him, Scott. So we'll see if it lasts. My only concern is you also have Philip Lindsay back there who got 8 touches. David Johnson's back there. And by the way, Rex Burkhead, the only running back, or excuse me, David Johnson, Rex Burkhead, the only running backs that had 8 catches, 4 combined, 3 going to Johnson. I figured Lindsay was going to be the receiving back there, but hey, who knows going week in and week out.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, it could be very, very odd some weeks too. I mean, these guys are all similar talent levels to me, and all kind of have conflicting skill sets. It's a very weird matchup.
Yeah, Browns on the other hand, I think you're right. They got the Chiefs. Baker, massive yardage, 1 interception. That's fine. No touchdowns. They ended up at the goal line, and it was Chubb with 2, Hunt and Landry each with 1 rushing. I mean, he still scored a lot, but just wasn't coming off of his arm, unfortunately, if you had him. Chubb and Hunt, I think that you're still going to see pretty similar numbers to that. Good news for Hunt, obviously only 6 carries for 33 yards. That touchdown helped, but he also had 3 receptions for another 28 yards. So that helps to bolster him in those PPR leagues. If you're in a standard league, I don't really want Hunt, at least while Chubb is out there playing.
I do this week.
That's fair. This week, I definitely would look at it. By the way, just going back to Giants-Washington, I did just see a report come across. Barkley is unlikely to be unleashed against Washington. I can't say I'm surprised, but here's the thing. He's still going to play. He's at worst a flex, I think, even when he's playing.
But yeah, he's got the touchdown upside.
You have to play him. I mean,
yeah,
he might
with
get
where you draft him.
Touchdowns,
Yeah.
Ride it out.
Yeah. So just wanted to bring that up. Sorry to change the topic there. But anything else on Texans-Browns, though, guys?
No, we're good.
All right. Well, moving into the Rams-Colts then. So Rams 1-0, favored 3.5 points over the Colts, who are 0-1, over under 47.5. This one's kind of a tricky one. I think I'm taking the over. And my gut says go with the Rams. My heart says go with the Colts. I think Wentz last week, not a bad performance, 25 for 38, nothing phenomenal, 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, but not bad either. The Seahawks also looked pretty good, so didn't help him. My biggest concern in Indy was Jonathan Taylor, 17 carries, only 56 yards. Again, about 3.3 yards a carry. Not ideal there, but he did have 6 catches for 60 yards, so that was pretty solid. These receivers are a little concerning as well. Obviously, Pascal had 2 touchdowns. If he's on your waiver wire, I'd pick him up because it looks like he's a favorite for every quarterback they've had in Indy. Otherwise, hoping Michael Pittman gets a breakout. I'm going to let you guys go really quick because I'm about to cough.
All right. I'm going to go with the Colts here. I'm going to take the Colts money line in some of my parlays this week because I think the Colts are better than people expect. Yeah, the Rams are salty, but I don't think the Rams are going to be able to run against the Colts, and I think that's going to make them more one-dimensional. And I think with a defense as talented as Indy has, if you can make a team one-dimensional, you can really start to control the game. I think that's what they do. I think JTT is a huge play this week. They're going to pound the ball. I know the Rams defense is good, but man, when the Colts are at their best, they can run on anybody. And if they can run on the Rams, they're going to have real problems dealing with this Colts offense. And I think they can. And I do think that Pascal remains very viable. The only thing I worry about is Ramsey is doing these shadowing things where he's running around the field. And if they put Ramsey on Pascal, that scares me. I'm quite intimidated by whoever Ramsey is on. So I'm a little nervous about which receiving option. Because if a guy starts getting hot, they just may move Ramsey to him, and there you go. He'll put that fire out quick. But I do like Van Jefferson again because of that Indy defense being so good. I think Jefferson with that speed can sneak another big one in this week. It's a guy I will play. But it's hard to know for me. Scott, you were saying Stafford all day and Kupp. I think that this might be a Woods game. I think you're going to see these guys kind of go back and forth. And this is not really the best defensive matchup, so I don't think I'm going to be targeting either one of these receivers or Higbee this week. Or Stafford for that matter. Maybe Van Jefferson in some tournament plays and nothing from the run game because the Colts defense is good. Yes, I think Seattle is very good. We're going to talk about them later. But I think the Colts shock people and pull off a little mini upset here.
Yeah, I'm liking the Rams a lot coming into this game. Stafford, I think he's only going to improve in this offense as his ability to roll to his left becomes a little more natural. You saw him do it, but it still seemed a little bit odd. It's obviously something he hasn't been asked to do all that often when he was in Detroit, but it's a big part of that offense. But he made this offense look a lot more smooth and fluid than I thought it ever really did with Goff. And I'm sure there's only going to be growth there with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and Higbee looked incredible as well. They were cruising, really, an opening weekend, and what really concerns me about the Colts against the Rams is really the Seahawks got home, and that's not that daunting of a D-line and front seven. Definitely not one that you put next to the Rams personnel. So without Quentin Nelson, I don't expect us to see this Colts team look quite what it's going to be come November, December. They'll be a lot more tough to stop than JTT. I'm hoping he can channel his inner David Montgomery and dice up these Rams, but I'm still tempering expectations for all my shares a little bit. Hoping he gets in the end zone this week to give you a serviceable day, but I look for it to be a bit of a struggle for him to get going. I'm really patiently waiting for Sony Michel's involvement in the Rams offense right now. I'm not that excited about Darrell Henderson. I do have a share or three where I am going to be starting him, but this Colts defense is a little bit stingy. I think it kind of feels like you said, Ryan, really a Robert Woods game because I think it's going to take that savvy guy that you're going to go to on third down a lot. Where Cooper Kupp, I think they're going to try to shut that down because he moves the chains the most often. So, and I expect Higbee to kind of be the guy that has to carry a little bit of that load outside of the big two. So we'll see how that goes and how this running game gets going for the Rams. But in my opinion, the Colts just can't tough a break. This is a rough schedule to start the year. They're going to start 0-2 and have to battle back. But luckily for them, the Titans aren't playing that well either, and that's really their only threat to win this division. So I really think JTT is the only Colt you can play this week, unless you're a desperate OBJ owner like myself and you play Pittman. But with the Ramsey shadow, temper expectations. We're hoping for 6 for 65 out of Pittman this week would be a nice day. So, but I am there in a couple spots already right now.
So, real quick before we move on, I'm going to wrap on the Rams. I'm finally able to breathe again. Only one I really wanted to touch on, the main one, was Darrell Henderson. I know you said you're not stoked on him, but I'll tell you what, 4.4 yards per carry isn't too bad. 16 for 70 yards and a touchdown. I'm not mad at those numbers. Even if he gets a couple more touches there, you're nudging 100 yards on a 18 to 20 carries. So that's a pretty solid day for him. Obviously not getting much work in the passing game. Only 1 for 17 yards though. But I can't be too upset with those numbers from a running back, especially with where you were getting him at least earlier in the drafts.
Sure. Yeah, especially before the Cam Akers news, Darrell Henderson was an 11th round pick. That was a great value in my opinion for him. I like the Rams, and I'm going to take the under against that Colts defense. If you guys have anything left, we'll move on to the Bills and Fins. So Bills starting out 0-1 after their AFC title appearance last season. Josh Allen had a rough day against Pittsburgh. We saw Devin Singletary play really well and kind of in a funny situation with the Zach Moss thing being a healthy scratch. I like Diggs and the guys right now, but I'm really waiting to kind of see who might step into that support role because I think they're going to need it for this team this year. Last year there was a lot of magic involved for the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, and now teams have some film. They've had a whole offseason to prepare. And I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to be that guy. I kind of like him in this game as a bit of a sleeper. Gabriel Davis is a guy that they're not going to forget about in Miami. They see him twice a year. They know, what kind of guy he is. I just don't see him getting loose for one. I think they'd rather have Emmanuel Sanders catch a bunch of underneath stuff than let Gabriel Davis get deep. So, and I'm not too interested in any of the Dolphins this week as Will Fuller comes back to the lineup. Kind of muddies up my Jalen Waddle feel. And so, to me, Bills get back on track. Bills and under Miami, but I think this is going to be another ugly one. Miami's going to have a lot of these kind of knockdown, drag-out, low-scoring games this year. Very good defense and an offense that's kind of struggling to find an identity, and they want to lay it on Tua, but he just doesn't look quite ready to me.
Oh, Tom's muted.
Yes.
Keeping it alive.
Damn it. Like I was saying, I do have some concerns about Tua. I think you're right. I mean, 16 for 27. He did have 3 drops, but still not ideal. I mean, we're talking, what's that? A 59% completion percentage. 202 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Only took 2 sacks, which isn't too bad. But he also only had 1 rush for 4 yards. So it's not like he's making up for it on the ground. At the end of the day, I am a little confused. This is a guy that had about a 74% on target percentage and only 3 drops, but it dropped him all the way to about a 60% completion percentage. It's kind of crazy to me. But that does kind of temper my expectations a little bit for most of the receivers on this team. I mean, looking at last week, 4 for Parker for 81, 4 Waddle for 61 yards and a touchdown, 5 for Gaskin. You're dumping it off. Those are the pretty easy gimme throws. We'll talk about a couple other quarterbacks that seemed to do that last week. The big hurt here was Mike Gesicki. No receptions last week. That was a killer. This is a guy that we were expecting to be probably a top 5 tight end, and
flirting with it.
Didn't get a touch last week. So definitely hurts his value. The Bills, on the other hand, Josh Allen, I mean, the guy threw 51 attempts last week. You're trying to catch back up to the Steelers, who got an early lead there. Definitely did not, or excuse me, you're ahead of the Steelers and trying to keep up with them when they got hot in the second half. But 270 yards, only 1 touchdown isn't going to do it. My big takeaway from last week was Devin Singletary, 11 carries, 72 yards, 6.5 yards per carry against a pretty decent Steelers defense. I'm not mad at those numbers. And obviously Zach Moss was a healthy scratch, which that definitely helped him out. But 6.5 yards per carry is no joke against a pretty good defense. So I do think about putting him at least in a flex spot this week. This is a guy that I didn't want much exposure to, but now I'm considering it.
Yeah, for me, I'll take the Bills and I will take the over. I think the Bills got embarrassed last week. I know Miami's defense is good, but Josh Allen's going to have 4 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing. He's going to destroy this team. It's not going to be pretty. I'm really concerned about Miami's offense. Billy mentioned Tua. I have the same concerns. It doesn't look like this is a franchise quarterback yet. I want to see them involve Gesicki more. I think Flores is a great coach, but what was that? That you got to involve a guy like that more. You got to get him the ball. So I'll still start Gesicki, like you said. The rest I'm shaky of because of Tua, and there's a lot of offensive questions. I don't really think I'm going to touch Miami. I think the Bills are going to be playing with they're going to be angry. That's for sure. I think Gabe Davis is going to score. I don't think there's anything they can do about it. That guy just seems to score. So for me, I'm kind of liking to target some of the Bills. I'm going to avoid Singletary because I think if they're trying to send him a message, they may throw 60 times this week. I really do think that what we saw was anomalous, and we're going to get a very masterful offensive showing this week from the Bills. Do y'all have anything else on this matchup? Knox, I love Knox. I think this is a prime game for him.
Hey, 4 catches last week, Ryan. That's an exciting start to the year because that's a little bit of progress from where we left off with him last year. Really kind of
against Pittsburgh
a little bit more. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. So moving on to the next game. Yeah, I think Knox is awesome. Moving on to the next game. Patriots, Jets. Patriots -6, over under 42. I think the Pats win a closer game than expected. So I think that I'll take the Jets with the points, but the Pats on the money line. I think we get to see a better Zach Wilson week 2. I think Corey Davis is DFS viable, in my opinion. Just the deep threat that he is and what he and Wilson seem to have already. And then for me, I also like Mac Jones in DFS. I saw the accuracy that I really wanted to see. I think this guy's got a solid future. He may not ever win MVP, but this guy's got a solid future. Accuracy is such a key thing, and he's got some athletes. Give me Aguilar this week for this matchup. New York is vulnerable in the backside. I think Aguilar takes advantage of it. I also would like a little Jonnu Smith. I just think he is so talented when he gets the ball in his hands. And then my real concern on the other side is, on the Patriots side, is Damian Harris. Is that volume going to be there again after those turnovers? Because he looked pretty solid, and I liked what I saw. I thought, wow, this kind of volume is a guarantee start for me every week. But those turnovers are concerning. And Bill Belichick, I hate that backfield. So I'm really kind of wanting to see. Yeah, I love James White. He looks just as viable now as he did with the Patriots. So for me, James White is now easily a flex play in PPR formats. But Damian Harris, I want to see, can he run the ball that often again without fumbling the ball, and will Belichick let him?
There I was on mute pulling a Pinto. So this is one of my favorite rivalries because it's not really a rivalry. The Jets just really hate the Patriots, and Belichick just happens to hate the Jets too. So it makes it a lot of fun. And how perfect that they show up on the schedule every time the Patriots get beat and shouldn't have, just so they can beat up on their little brother at the perfect time to get on track every year. Same thing, always. So Damian Harris, like you said, Ryan, he's really intriguing. All that volume, nobody else really even challenged in any way that would make you feel like they were going to have any sort of workload that would matter. But where are the touchdowns with this guy? Even dating back to last year, he was a viable flex option that was a touchdown away from being an RB1 a good portion of the back half of the season last year. So where are the touchdowns? We need to see them. Unfortunately, I think James White might be in catching short passes and vulture a lot of those, but I would like to see Damian Harris do a little bit more. I'm very intrigued, and I'm paying attention. Jacoby Myers is growing on me in this offense with Mac Jones. He led the team in targets last week. And Nelson Aguilar, too, is another guy that I wouldn't mind having on a few bench spots for plug-and-play times when I need a guy. He seems to just continue to do better and better since he left Philadelphia. The Jets on offense are in for a long day. In my opinion, this is a very good Patriot defense, and I expect the New England offense to have something to say about that Jets defense being that good. And I just don't know that this game is going to go all that well. So it's almost unfair how they land on the schedule. Like I said, it just seems prime for the Patriots to just get back on track. Mac Jones coming out party. I'm taking the Patriots in the over. I think the Patriots score most, if not all, of that 42 by themselves.
I'll tell you what, I don't know if I want over or under because I think this game goes one of two ways. I think either these teams are battling it out and it's going to be you're throwing for 300 yards apiece and it's going to be high scoring, or it's just going to be in the trenches and it's going to be 10-7. Like it's either going to be 50 points or 14 points. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with that being said, obviously tough to determine, but my guess is it's going to be a little more throw heavy. I did like what I saw from both quarterbacks last week, starting with the Jets, Zach Wilson up against the Panthers defense, which I don't dislike the Panthers defense. I think that you have a lot of good pieces there. Obviously, as a whole, they need to get a little more cohesive, and their linebackers are not the best, but some good cornerbacks there, good safety, and Jeremy Chin. And then the D-line's not terrible either. But you went 20 for 37, 258, 2 touchdowns, only 1 pick, again, in that rookie debut. I'm not upset with those numbers. I do wish Michael Carter got a bit more involved. Obviously, only 4 carries for 6 yards last week. And then 1 reception for 14. That's where he's going to shine whenever they get him in there is receiving. That's what he did at UNC. He can run the ball, but he's that, Darren Sproles-esque small guy that's going to get out of the backfield and catch the ball. So I am storing him on a lot of benches because I think the potential is there. Maybe not this week, but hopefully soon. Corey Davis definitely looked good. 5 receptions for 97 yards last week and 2 touchdowns. I wouldn't expect that same production with, double touchdowns, obviously, every week. But it seemed like that was his favorite target. I wouldn't be shocked to see, a little bit of a heavier, target share to him, if you will. Patriots, on the other hand, Mac Jones, 29 for 39. Again, pretty solid option for, rookie debut, especially against a stingy Miami defense. Only 281 yards and 1 touchdown. No receptions, though. Obviously, Nelson Aguilar, I hate him since leaving the Eagles. I hated him with the Eagles, too. But leading receiver, 5 receptions, 72 yards, and a touchdown is no joke. And when there's not a lot of other good options, this is a guy that we saw play pretty well for the Raiders last year. I don't have an issue with starting Aguilar because who else are they really giving the ball to? James White out of the backfield. And, we had some people, I think it was Scott Davis in the chat, point out Jacoby Myers got 6 targets for 44 yards. And then Jonnu Smith got another 5 receptions. But a lot of guys that get the touches, but it seems like Aguilar is the one that gets yards with the touches. So that's my pick for a Patriots receiver. But real quick, we got a bit of an interesting one in the chat here. Gabe Flores has Mixon and James Robinson and Saquon. Does he bench Saquon this week or trust him in the flex?
Unless you're in the 8-team league where your bench is consisting of players that are out of this world, I think that you're going to have to play Saquon because there's nobody else, in my opinion. I would highly doubt that you have a receiver you could slot in with the same kind of ceiling. And I do think that even though they didn't involve him heavily last week, he's going to be more involved this week. I know it's Washington's defense, but it's just almost impossible for me to bench him with his touchdown upside that he possesses. I do think we see a better New York team this week. I would keep Saquon in the lineup personally, but I understand if you want to get somebody safer because he's still on that snap count. So I think it's viable to take him out if you do have a really quality bench option behind him. But I don't know who's the receiver or the other running back that you would flex over Saquon. Because for me, I just don't see how there's going to be a guy that I look at and see the same floor combo and the same ceiling combo with the snap count included. I know last week was bad, but I don't foresee a repeat of that. So I'm thinking Saquon for sure. What do you think, Tom?
I'll tell you what, I'm in the same boat. I mean, James Robinson.
See, I don't think I
could
do Kirk. It's going to be AJ Green this week. It's going to be AJ. We're going to talk about this.
Yeah, we'll get into that game. Yeah. My thoughts really quick. James Robinson, I want him on the bench right now because I don't know what that offense is looking like. I mean, last week, 5 rushes for 25 yards, 3 receptions. Great. That's 3 points if you're in PPR, 29 yards. That's not big points, right? Saquon has the opportunity to score a touchdown. We talked about, they're not going to unleash him, I think was the word I used this week. But with that being said, again, if it's a PPR league, I still have faith that Saquon's going to get a couple of catches and very possibly a touchdown this week. That alone is worth the potential as a flex, I think. My thought is shoot us a message with more details at Fantasy FR Live on Twitter. We can go in depth on it, look at the full roster, look at what the specific, stat lines are for the settings are for that league. If it's PPR, if it's standard, whatever, we can go into it a little more in depth as well.
I would say if Christian Kirk is your option, I would bench neither Robinson or Saquon for Christian Kirk. I think Robinson has a bigger game this week too. We haven't covered them yet, but we will be. Urban Meyer has got to have learned his lesson here and realizing you've got to establish the run game, and they didn't do that at all. And if you want to help your rookie quarterback, James Robinson is how you do that. You need to be wiser. Urban Meyer made some rookie coach mistakes, I think, and we're going to see a little heavier dose of Robinson next week.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to think so, albeit you got to keep in mind Urban Meyer, he's done this before. Let's see if he figures it out eventually. But
yeah, I start those guys.
Yeah. But with that being said, that's going to move us into our next game, which is I'll be at this game, actually. So I'm a little excited for it, even though I'm probably going to see a loss for my team. 49ers coming into Philly. 49ers 1-0, favored at minus 3.5 points at the Eagles. Also 1-0, winning in Atlanta last week. Over under 50 points. I'm taking the under on this one. Ryan knows I already bet the under on this one. I haven't bet the Niners, but I definitely think that's who's going to win it. Watching last week's game, Jalen Hurts didn't look bad. 27 for 35, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns, and another 7 carries for 62 yards. I think that the issue that you're going to see is at the end of the day, he's throwing it at the line of scrimmage or just past, about 5 yards or in. For over 50% of his passes. He's not getting deep. I think defenses are going to realize that pretty quickly. He really was hesitant to throw the ball. Generally, when he was running it, he had guys open downfield and was choosing to just tuck and run it. So I'm not sure if that's scheme or if that's him lacking some confidence to throw the ball deep. I mean, we saw last year's where his completion percentage was in the 50s. It's not ideal. 52% last year was not great. So Hurts, I am hesitant to start. Obviously, his rushing floor does help him. Miles Sanders, solid game, 15 carries for 74. The big news, though, was Gainwell, 9 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown, along with 2 receptions and 6 yards in his rookie debut. This is a guy that was a late round pick, I believe, 5th or 6th round.
Crazy.
That's a pretty impressive start week 1 for him, especially when you think this is a team that has Boston Scott in there as well, who for the last 2-3 years has been a favorite for this team. That's been kind of their bread and butter when Sanders wasn't in. It was the Boston Scott show. So a little surprising. Devontae Smith, 6 for 71 and a touchdown. Jalen Reagor, 6 for 49 and a touchdown. Dallas Goedert, 4 for 42 and a touchdown. They were giving everybody the ball. I don't think that continues with the 49ers. If I had to pick somebody, I think it's Goddard is the safest play out of any of the quote unquote receivers. Smith and Reagor, I'd take Smith over Reagor, but yet to be seen. Quez Watkins is kind of a big play guy. You're hoping for the best. But like I said, I think Hurts is going to be a limiting factor at some point here, hoping for the best. Maybe he won't be, but the 49ers, on the other hand, Garoppolo didn't look bad. 314 yards and a touchdown, 17 for 25. The big story, though, was Elijah Mitchell. I just want to know how much he went in free agency bid in everybody's leagues, because it seemed like everyone was using their entire free agency bid budget to get Elijah Mitchell. Obviously, Raheem Mostert out for the year. And then I did hear, was it with Debo or one of the receivers there that they were saying, he needs to be far superior to his counterparts in order to be a clear starter. I was a bit surprised. I forget if it was Debo or I'm blanking on the other receiver.
Must have been Ayuk because Debo was a monster.
Yeah, Ayuk. I was a little surprised by that. Yeah, he didn't have any receptions last week, didn't even have a target. So a little surprising there.
Yeah, for me here, I'll take the under in the 49ers as well. And this is another Deebo Samuel game, baby. He's going to be another top scoring receiver. Stick with this guy while he's healthy. This is what he is. I love Kittle in this matchup too. I don't really like the Eagles. I think we get to see a little bit if they're for real this week. I think this is a more wait and see week for me. I also think that the Eagles defense is going to be good enough to where we can see if Jimmy G can be for real in this offense, or will it just slowly funnel into Lance's lap? Are we going to see the highly accurate Jimmy that we saw last week, or are we going to get a little bit of an exposure to what we kind of all really know he is? In the brass tacks, he's just a serviceable quarterback, and I think he's going to get exposed a little bit this week. That's what he is.
Yeah, I'm still in love with Trey Sermon, guys. Don't panic yet. There was something up with Trey Sermon and Ayuk being so left out of the game plan, but there's still enough work for him and Elijah Mitchell moving forward, because Raheem Mostert was never going to be a guy that got 250 carries. So I believe it's just Elijah Mitchell is going to be the guy that actually kind of got the promotion. Jermichael Hasty really isn't on that radar. He suited and played, a small amount of snaps, and I think that was more strictly because, Trey wasn't on the field. I love Debo. More Debo, please. Keep it up. Keep him in your starting lineups. This guy is what he is. Last year, that foot injury coming into the year, I was stressing to you guys that this is something that you want to avoid. Foot injuries are sketchy, especially with guys that are running backs and wide receivers that are out making cuts and things like that. So that's really what held him back last season. I did pick the Eagles last week. Pleasantly surprised with how well they beat the Falcons. That was a little bit surprising. I thought they would kind of win kind of like a late shootout that, things got exciting at the end of the fourth quarter, but really they handled the Atlanta Falcons, and I was pretty impressed with the Eagles both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So I like Jalen Hurts going forward. He's really a fantasy player's dream. The guy's produced every start he's got since he took over right at the end of last season. Miles Sanders, he's going to continue to lead this backfield. But Gainwell's going to get some work, guys. He's going to be a guy that's a viable flex starter on any week because he's a firecracker. Any play could be the big one. He's catching balls. It's going to give him a little bit of a floor. It does take away from Miles Sanders' upside, not getting those receptions in my mind, though. But touchdowns might be tricky, and that's where these two could get frustrating as the season progresses, in my opinion. But gut tells me Philly's better than we think. I'll take the Eagles and the over. Eagles 2-0 and surprising the league, and a lot of hype coming into week 3.
Yeah, I do want to mention before we move on to the next team, I did like what I saw from Miles Sanders. I thought he looked shifty and agile. He was moving well. That was what I wanted to see.
He's the man.
Yeah, I agree. I liked it.
I liked it too.
# we are. Big Ten. It means more.
So another one of these matchups that's really kind of these gut checks for these teams. It's incredible this week too. Slate really is a perfect matchup with so many teams trying to show up they're legit, going to stay out of a hole, or if they are who we think they are. And the Raiders at the Steelers is another perfect one. Both teams winning games that 3 weeks ago you weren't picking to win Week 1. The Raiders with the Ravens, that would almost seem like a no-brainer. And then the Bills on the Steelers, the way the Steelers ended last year, just on an inevitable slide after that 11-0 start, and the Buffalo Bills coming off that playoff run. So you would have thought both of those games would have went funny. So these are really both surprising 1-0 teams who played surprisingly well, and the Steelers really looked kind of shitty in my opinion, but they still won the game. And I think that could be dangerous later in the year as this offense starts to put it together with Najee Harris. But big win for the Raiders at home over those injury-plagued Ravens. And Carr paid off huge for those of us who waited on quarterbacks and ended up with him. Josh Jacobs, that toe injury is a concern for me. I'm playing him until you can't. But if you're a Josh Jacobs owner who does not own Kenyon Drake, make a move. Any minute now, Josh Jacobs could be missing significant time, and toe injuries are really funny. Even when he does come back, he may not be that guy, and Kenyon Drake could very well have a stranglehold on that offense. 5 catches for 59 yards last week for Drake. Gives him a really nice floor as well as a guy you might be able to plug into your flex position if you're hurting right now already, like a couple of my teams are. But wide receivers need to show up for the Raiders. Pittsburgh beat Buffalo in the most Pittsburgh way possible. They're going to be grimy fight. I think Najee Harris gets going, and I really believe that this week will pay off that early draft investment. And I think the Steelers roll the Raiders. Give me the Steelers at -5.5. And I'll take the over as well. I think the Raiders can score points.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start on the Raiders here, right? Derek Carr, 34 completions on 56 attempts for 435 yards. I mean, I know the Ravens are missing their top corner, so obviously that's a game changer, right? But those are still some big numbers. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, not too terrible on that side. Josh Jacobs, only 10 carries for 34 yards, but had 2 touchdowns that kept him relevant. Darren Waller was a reception machine, 10 for 105 with a touchdown. Kind of the surprise to me, Bryan Edwards, 4 receptions for 81 yards, and Renfro 6 for 70. I mean, it doesn't get much better. And even Kenyon Drake got kept relevant. He only had 6 carries for 11 yards, but 5 receptions for 59. Not the worst flex play in the world. It's an interesting team to say the least. I think that against the Steelers, you're going to see a similar thing where it's a gun show. Derek Carr is going to be throwing it a lot. I don't think Jacobs is going to be running it a ton. I think that he's going to be touchdown dependent, similar to last week. And I don't know if he has another 2 touchdown game in him for this. It's possible, but I definitely wouldn't try and bet the house on it, if you will. The Steelers, on the other hand, Ben Roethlisberger didn't impress me. Obviously, the Bills' defense is decent at least. It's not bad, but 18 for 32 and 188 yards and 1 touchdown. I didn't get to watch as much of this game as I wanted, so maybe one of you guys can give me a little insight here, but those numbers don't seem that great. And Najee only 16 carries. This is a guy we were hoping to have 300 touches this year. Not off to that start, right? I mean, I don't know who I want to see in this offense other than we got a slight little snapshot of, I think, what we can expect to see from Pat Freiermuth. Only 1 catch, but 24 yards on it, right? This is a guy we talked about. He's going to be in there for blocking. He can block very well, and he's athletic enough to get downfield, find space, and get the ball. Eventually, I think we see that breakout.
Yeah, for me on this game, I like the Steelers, and I like the under. It's not that the Steelers' offense is anything special or anything, but their defense is really good. They have a great defense. The Raiders have weapons, but the Steelers match up as well as anyone with them. They're not going to be able to run the ball, I don't think. And the Raiders can't stop this many weapons on the other side. Their defense is going to be viable. I mean, it's going to be like a liability for them in some games. I was concerned with some of the Waller drops, but the volume doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Deontay Johnson on the other side looked like the wide receiver to own, but I still think Claypool's upside makes him the most exciting for me. And as far as Najee, I think he will get going, but he's going to struggle. They're going to struggle to run all year. Their line can't enforce their will, and that is concerning for me. They need to get Najee involved in the passing game for him to realize the potential that we see in him, because they're not going to be able to establish the run against very many teams. Do y'all have anything else you want to add on the Raiders Steelers? All right, cool. So then we're going to move on to the next game. Saints and Panthers. So Saints minus 3.5 over the Panthers, and we have a 44.5 spread. So for me, I'm going to take the Saints. I'm going to take the over. Give me Jameis, Kamara, and Callaway all day here. I know you were saying the Panthers defense isn't terrible, but I don't think it's very good. And the other thing is, I think Juwan Johnson is this year's Darren Waller. I like Troutman, but Johnson has the higher ceiling. He even moves like Darren Waller. I really got impressed on his touchdown catches. I think Juwan Johnson is going to be a sneaky steal. You should pick him up if somebody hasn't already. That's likely they already have, though. And then the other side, CMC is always viable, but I'm not really DFSing him this week. I think the Saints can stop the run. They've always been pretty good at it. And then I'm not thinking I'm all about Darnold or the wide receivers either. The Saints have some mo going. They do have a salty defense. They have for a while, actually. And I think Jameis gives that offense a few more dimensions that they haven't had as far as or what they would have with Taysom Hill, I should say. And I do think we're going to see more involved Taysom Hill moving forward. I didn't think they used him enough, but they were just beating the bejesus out of Green Bay. They didn't have to. I think if a game gets closer, we're going to see a little more Taysom involvement. But I'm avoiding the Panthers this week in DFS. I mean, obviously you're starting your studs, but I'm not excited about the matchup.
Yeah, I have like odd concerns about both teams and their star players who played well last week. From the Saints, I'm very concerned about the usage with Alvin Kamara. I don't see him being a 20 carry a week guy, and they have him back behind him, Tony Jones Jr., who was relatively productive in his 12 touches that he received. And also Kamara only having those 3 catches is another little bit of a concern, just because that's really been his upside in recent years, is his 81 or finally 83 or 5 receptions. But I did like what I saw to Jameis, really spreading the ball around. A lot of these Saints guys are going to be relatively good plays in your flex spots, and it's going to be just kind of a little bit of luck, rolling the dice on which one catches the bomb. But I think as the season goes on, Sean Payton's going to start letting Jameis rip it. I think a lot of last week, 1, it came pretty easy. And 2, he was trying to keep Jameis from making a mistake. And Jameis played very well, 5 touchdowns, but really an underwhelming number of passing yards. This offense is going to kind of mold and grow as the season goes. They're going to be very exciting. I like them over the Panthers. And my concern with the Panthers is, one, I don't know how many games Christian McCaffrey can have 30 touches and be able to stay on the field. 20 rushes, 9 receptions. That's a lot of work for a guy that's coming off an injury last year and had a pretty big workload the year before. So obviously, as a fantasy owner, you love the production. However, it is a bit of a concern for me moving forward, just longevity-wise. I don't know, one of those things. But I do like the Panthers. I think this game is going to be fun. I'll take the over. I think Sam Darnold and Jameis Winston have a little bit of a shootout as the Saints pull away late.
There we go. Couldn't be on mute again. So the Saints, I mean, I think when you look at Jameis's stats, right, obviously very underwhelming with the yards, like you said, Billy, 148 yards, 14 for 20 is great, for a completion percentage and 5 touchdowns. I think he was very much benefited by the fact that they had 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and 1 fumble. So you're, most of the time getting short fields there. Their defense did a great job. If they do it again, it's going to benefit him because you get more touchdowns, and that's obviously just big points quick, right? 5, 6 points depending on your scoring. But with that being said, I'm not overly confident that he's going to put up 5 touchdowns a game, or play at this level. I think he'll be good, definitely, but not that QB1 necessarily. Kamara, 20 carries for 83 yards, but didn't really catch much, 3 for 8 yards out of the backfield. So this was kind of what we talked about going out of last season into this season, where people had concerns with Breeze leaving. Who's going to be the quarterback? Is Kamara really going to succeed? We didn't really know so much what it looked like with Jameis. We knew what it looked like with Taysom, and it wasn't great. I think that we're seeing with Jameis, as it sits, it's not great either, because that PPR value is a bit lower because he's not getting 5 to 10 catches. He's getting 2 or 3. So hopefully that increases, week to week. But for the time being, obviously you're still going to start him, but hedge your expectations for him a little bit so you don't get hurt. Nobody else receiving wise. I mean, Deontay Harris, big play, two receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown. But aside from that, nobody really impressed me. Juwan Johnson, great. You had 2 touchdowns, but nothing crazy as far as receiving yards or numbers. The Panthers, on the other hand, Sam Darnold, I think he played well. Jets defense, I think, is better than we're giving credit for. Robert Saleh is a defensive-minded coach. So 24 for 35, 279 yards and a touchdown. Not bad numbers. McCaffrey, like you said, a lot of touches at 30, but the biggest thing there, I just want to see a little bit more Chuba Hubbard or somebody like that in the backfield to just take a little bit of the load off of him.
Yeah, exactly. Just a few key carries, a few touches here and there make a big difference.
Yeah, and I don't have a concern about that knocking down his fantasy value too much for CMC, but just enough to keep him healthy throughout the season and keep.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. Man,
exactly.
Chuba can handle 8 carries. Come on, guys.
Exactly, and he didn't have a single one this past week. He had 2 catches for 4 yards, so not somebody I'm looking to start yet. The one guy that I am still keeping an eye on, maybe not starting yet, Terrace Marshall. 3 catches, 26 yards. Not a huge game, but preseason he was big. He was the best rookie receiver statistically.
He was open in the end zone this week, and Darnold missed him. Had a great opportunity to make a little bit of a name week 1, but
it'll happen. It'll happen. So
it was there. It was there.
Yeah. I think as they kind of build up a little bit more rapport between the team, we might see a little bit of an improvement there. Fingers crossed for it. I think they're a better team than a lot of people give them credit for. I think the Panthers. Personally, you guys know I got this parlay going. I took the Panthers in this one. I believe I took the under on it as well, though. I think it's not going to be a shootout quite as much, no, it wasn't over because defenses are good but not great. I mean, you're going to have to throw the ball a little bit, and it'll benefit both teams, right? Right.
I think the Saints are going to win this game.
I'm going to take the Panthers, and I'm going to be the bold one. All right?
All right.
Anything else on the Saints-Panthers, though?
Golden.
All right. Well, we're going to move into Teddy Two Gloves on the Broncos. 1-0, taking on the Jaguars. 0-1, over under 45.5. Broncos favored by 6 away, by the way. So big favorites there in Jacksonville. Obviously, playing the Giants last week, Teddy Bridgewater looked pretty good. 28 for 36, 264 yards and 2 touchdowns. As sad as it makes me to see, Drew Lock, the Glock on the sideline, it's good football from Teddy Bridgewater. Definitely, I would say super flex worthy or QB2 worthy if you need it, but maybe not QB1 numbers. Melvin Gordon, 11 carries, 101 yards and a touchdown was huge. Javonte Williams, 14 touches for 45 yards. Not as efficient on the ground as Melvin, of course. He had the big run for 70 yards, something like that.
Yep.
But still a solid game for Javonte. His only catch, unfortunately, was -4 yards. But I think that we'll see, similar to Michael Carter, he was a receiving back at UNC, so I think we'll see a little bit more of that going forward. Jerry Jeudy, fortunately not a broken ankle, right? But high ankle sprain, so he's out for a while. He had a huge game. So Noah Fant, KJ Hamler, and Tim Patrick are my guys going forward. I think Cortland Sutton's going to take all the heat from defenses, and those 3 are just going to run wild. And even Albert O made a name for himself in this one, 3 for 16 and a touchdown. So a couple guys to keep an eye on there. On the other side, the Jaguars, not overly exciting. You lose to the Texans in week 1. Trevor Lawrence, 28 for 51, 332, 3 touchdowns, but 3 picks. Backfield was ugly. Carlos Hyde got 9 carries for 44 yards. James Robinson, 5 for 25. Their averages were good, about 5 yards per carry each, but not enough volume for either. Receiving wise, DJ Chark, who both, everyone here is like DJ Chark for a few, 2 years now at least. And then Laviska, 7 for 50, both pretty solid. And Marvin Jones, a good game as well. So I think those are the big 3. James O'Shaughnessy had a decent game in 6 receptions, 48 yards. I don't have faith in him to keep that up. The other 3, I think, will.
Yeah, for me, I'll take the Broncos. I'll take the over. Teddy looked great. He looked precise. Precision was the word I would use. I'm all over Teddy moving forward. Sutton, I don't think if Teddy's diamond like that, I don't think it matters what defenses do because Sutton is that talented. So for me, I'm all over Sutton. I'm all over Tim Patrick. I also like him. And then Noah Fant. It's just the Jaguars are going to have a hard time stopping the Broncos. I'm also not so sure I like Melvin Gordon. Don't let that one big run fool you. He was not that impressive otherwise. So I still think this is going to be Javonte Williams' backfield in the long haul. But Gordon's he's still flexible, especially now. I mean, that big play is going to get him some goodwill. For the Jags, they got to use James Robinson. I know I mentioned this a bit earlier, and I think they know that they need to use James Robinson. So I think they're going to use James Robinson. So I'm really into James Robinson this week, especially considering, I think I mentioned this last week, the Broncos have the most expensive secondary in the NFL. So I don't know that the Jags are going to be able to throw it as effectively as they want to. And I think that the only way they have a chance of even getting close to not letting the Broncos blow them out is to go some heavy doses of Robinson, either on the ground or through the air. That should open things up for Visca and Chark and Marvin Jones, and at least let them stay competitive. Other than Robinson, though, I'm not really high on anybody in this matchup. I do want to mention, I think Chris Manhertz is a guy to keep an eye on. I think he's more talented than O'Shaughnessy, and he moves more like a receiver. I don't really think this is a blocking guy. I think he's a receiving guy, and he may be a viable option with the Jags playing from behind so often.
Yeah, another deterrent for that Jags passing game, in my opinion, is Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. I don't think you want them introducing themselves to Trevor Lawrence until after the game is over. I just see a lot of bad matchup situations for the Jags in this game. I like the Broncos. I'm going to take the under. I think they win handedly, but I don't think the Jags score a lot of points. They better start using J-Rob because, come on, he's a lot better football player than Carlos Hyde is at this point in his career. And I'm looking for Laviska Shenault to really take one of those little quick screen passes that he's getting and make something really happen. Last week, a lot of really good open field tackles on our guy, but I do expect him to really have a solid floor. Like that 7 for 50, it's kind of like the worst thing that I expect out of Laviska moving forward. So I was very happy with that out the gate. Trevor Lawrence really was dishing it up. Everybody had a little bit of production around him, so no reason to think this offense can't be fantasy friendly. I think it's just going to be kind of matchup based. As far as the running back situation in Denver, I'm with you, Ryan. I was a Melvin Gordon guy coming in, but I just didn't like what I saw. The one run, yeah, that's fine, but if he doesn't make that one run, it's like an 11 for 34 day. Really underwhelming for a guy that was RB14 last year in PPR scoring. So Javonte Williams being that young guy, I think they just ease him into action, and as the year goes on, he's going to be the value there. But Cortland Sutton is going to step up, and my reasoning for this is Jerry Jeudy made you not have to throw to that tougher coverage that Cortland Sutton draws because he's on your number 2 corner. Jerry Jeudy's wide open. He was having a hell of a day starting out last week before that ankle injury. I think they turn to Sutton and Fant, get these big guys going. And I think KJ Hamler is a pretty similar talent to Jerry Jeudy, maybe not on that level. However, I think he can do a similar job and will fill that role nicely to kind of keep some continuity going with this offense. I like what I saw to Teddy Bridgewater. I see why he won this job. He was balling this last week, and I expect the Broncos to keep kind of moving together. I saw a little snippet of Von Miller talking to Teddy Bridgewater, and the defense is starting to get excited about what they're seeing and the leadership that Teddy Bridgewater's bringing. So the Broncos might be sneaky good this year on the back of Teddy Bridgewater, and he could have one of those years where, hey, remember how we used to talk about how he didn't push the ball downfield? I think that might change here relatively soon. And hey, mid-season they get Jerry Jeudy back, you guys. So Broncos are in good shape. They're a dark horse playoff team, in my opinion, and I think they spanked the Jaguars.
Real quick, I just want to mention with Melvin Gordon, I think these first few weeks, I think he is still viable just because they want to beat the wheels off him. You don't have him next year. You don't care about him.
Right.
Beat the wheels off him while Javonte gets his feet wet. And then as Javonte's confident, you start playing him. And then on the receiver side, Tim Patrick, you can't sleep on the man. This is a guy that last year on 51 receptions had 742 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's good numbers. And he's not a small guy either. I mean, 6'4", 212. He can get up there and get some catches. So I think that KJ has the speed. Tim Patrick has the size. I don't think Sutton's going to be an afterthought by any means, but I think that he draws that main coverage because that's the best receiver.
Yeah, he's the only guy you double.
Exactly. And Teddy being the smart quarterback he is, the efficient quarterback he is, he's going to go for the guy that's open which I think more often than not, because they're the 2 and 3, are going to be, or the tight end. It's Fant, Hamler, and Patrick.
I agree. That takes us to the Vikings heading to the desert, playing the Arizona Cardinals, who are 1-0. Vikings coming off that loss to the Bengals. Cardinals favored by 3.5 and over under a 50.5. I like the Cardinals and the under. I don't think the Vikings are going to score that much on this Cardinals defense, who just absolutely annihilated the Tennessee Titans last week. 5 sacks from Chandler Jones. Are you kidding me? And the Vikings just got beat by the Bengals, and really, they didn't look impressive at any stretch during this game. Dalvin Cook didn't get going. It was kind of a nightmare performance for the Vikings coming out of the gate. You don't want to lose to that Bengals team, especially when you know how poor that offensive line is. Maybe this is where the Vikings kind of start to unravel a little bit. This could be a not very fun season for them, because I think the Cardinals are really going to pound them into the ground this week. I like what I saw out of Nuke, obviously coming out of the gate hot. Christian Kirk catching 2 bombs. AJ Green's going to provide that one presence that might make Christian Kirk's third-year breakout come to fruition, you guys. So I picked him up in a lot of places, have him in a lot of places. I'm very excited going forward. I hope that AJ Green can just provide that little bit of distraction to help getting him deep for Kyler. But the Cards look good. The running back situation doesn't. The run game does not look good. Hopefully they get that fixed. But still going to be a hairy situation to figure out who's the value out of Chase Edmonds and Connor in that backfield.
All I know is I'm ready for QB1. 100% completion percentage last week. You know who I'm talking about? Justin Jefferson.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys saw that play or not. I forget. I don't even know who it was they threw it to, but he almost dropped it. He bobbled a wide open pass and barely caught it. But Justin Jefferson, 1-for-1 throwing with 11 yards, QB1. But no, Kirk Cousins, we talked about going into the season here. Efficient quarterback. Again, another one of those guys that doesn't make those bad choices and always puts up pretty much year in and year out 4,000 plus yards. I'd bet this year it's 4,500 with the extra game. I'd be very shocked if it was under the 4,500 mark. Started off last week 36 for 49, 351 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, those are pretty solid numbers. Thielen and Jefferson, obviously big games. KJ Osborne surprised me. I don't know about you guys. 7 receptions, 76 yards. I was pretty surprised by that. I mean,
I kept going, who is this guy? Because every time he'd catch a ball, I'm like, hey, this guy looks good. Eyeball test.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about who's going to be the receiver 3 there. It seems as of early, at least, that's the guy. So if you have a receiver need, you need somebody, a little deeper. I'm in on KJ Osborne, at least early. Tyler Conklin, not terrible. And then Dalvin Cook, monster. You're going to play him, obviously, 20 carries for 61 yards and 6 receptions for 43. So if you drafted him, you're going to play Dalvin Cook, no question. On the other side, Kyler Murray, good game, 21 for 32, 289, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. My thing I'm going to talk about, because you guys already talked receivers real quick. Chase Edmonds versus James Conner. James Conner, 16 carries. He won the touches there, 53 yards. He also had an extra he did not have any catches. But Chase Edmonds, 12 carries, 4 catches, 63 rushing yards, 43 receiving yards, averaged 5.2 rushing yards per carry and 10.8 receiving yards per reception. And you guys thought there was a question about who RB1 is on this team?
No.
It's Chase Edmonds. It's Chase Edmonds. For the people in the back, Chase Edmonds is the guy in Arizona. It's not James Conner.
Yeah, I agree. Give me Kyler, give me Nuke, and give me Edmonds. Edmonds was effective. He did not get the touches that you would want to see from the RB1, but he looked good in the touches he did get. I think this is an AJ Green week instead of the Christian Kirk week from last week. I think AJ Green's a very sneaky DFS play. Also, again, Cardinals and over. And then on the other side, I still dig Cousins, Cook, Thielen, Jefferson. I still like all of them. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. We all want exposure to this game. But the guy I want the most is Hopkins. I don't think they're going to be able to stop him. I don't feel a guarantee about Kirk and Green the same way that I do about Hopkins. He's the only sure thing in that offense. On the other side, I think you got a bunch of sure things, and I don't think the Cardinals defense is that good. I think it had more to do with the team we'll be talking about later, the Titans just being off. So for me, this one, in my opinion, is going to be very high scoring.
Yeah, Chandler Jones was on last week, so I think
Yeah,
that was the difference
amazing.
maker.
Crazy, yeah. So moving on to the next game we have on the slate, Falcons at Bucks. Good God. 12.5 favorites, the Bucks, 52 over under. We were chatting about this before the show as well. For me, my God, I'm going to take the Bucks. I'm going to take the over. They're going to score 52 themselves. Brady is after the touchdown record this year. The Bucks offense is not going to put the brakes on. They're going to hold the gas down to the last second of the game. Falcons are going to try, but I wouldn't use a single human being from Atlanta this week in any format for any reason outside Kyle Pitts and obviously your redraft. And then obviously you might be stuck with Matt Ryan. And then you start Ridley because he's Ridley, but that was disappointing last week. So your studs obviously in nothing in DFS, not a single thing. And then on the other side, you got to use Brady. Holy bejesus, he's going to destroy this team. I don't think they're going to try to run. I think he's going to make this a Mike Evans game since Evans didn't really do so well last week. And then Gronk last week was really impressive. Can that be sustained? Or is this a OJ Howard week and then maybe a Cameron Brakeweed sprinkled in throughout there? Or do we get to see primo Gronk every week? Because if so, this guy hops right into the tight end one status as he proved last week. We saw old Gronk. The other thing I want to comment on here is AB is going to remain viable all year as a three-headed wide receiver one room. We were not valuing AB where we should have. We had Evans and Godwin much higher. It looks like AB is going to get a crazy target share this year, and he's going to be one of those steals that you did. You drafted him late. You really should have drafted him early. Everybody should have drafted him early. It looks like Brady loves him.
Yeah, the Falcons are going to get absolutely annihilated in this game. Like you said, Ryan, you got to start Calvin Ridley just because of who he is, where you drafted him, and what you're relying on him to be. And ultimately, the Falcons are going to be playing catch-up, and Ridley's the number one guy in this offense. You saw what you wanted out of Pitts last week from a volume standpoint, not a production standpoint. But ultimately, a lot of us kind of told you to temper your expectations. A rookie tight end, call him what you want, a wide receiver, whatever, and he's still a rookie. And everybody's going to be eyeing for him to not be the guy that goes off against them. And I don't think he's going to get that off the ground against this Buccaneers defense either. So Ridley's the only Falcon I want to play. And I really think the Falcons are going to end up with the number one pick in the draft and be able to replace Matt Ryan this year, as they need to start rebuilding. It just didn't work. The run game wasn't quite there. It's just really right now looks all bad in Atlanta. And Tampa Bay is the wrong team to have to go to their house and play in that scenario. 12.5 points seems like a lot, but there's no way I'm going to put any money on the Falcons, just praying to keep it close. Over under 52, I think that might be, like you said, right what the Bucks are shooting for in this one. Three-headed monster receiver, absolutely. And don't bail on Mike Evans just yet. He was the guy that they tried to stop. They really keyed on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Antonio Brown got going. They put the clamps on him, and then Godwin tore him up the rest of the day. Mike Evans is going to attract that attention. He's that guy. But there's also going to be matchups like this one where it doesn't matter what they do. They don't have a defense that can hold him. Mike Evans will get on track this week in a very big way. So I'm excited for that. Godwin's going to keep going. And I think Antonio Brown will be the one that'll be a little bit more hit and miss just because of where he's at in the pecking order. But, man, Brady sure does like to favor him. And Gronk looked like the old Gronk. He looked healthy. He looked fluid. And that's very, very scary. Like we were talking about watching the game. Like, are you kidding me? This guy, like, he came back from the dead almost. When he was a Patriot running down the field, it looked painful from your couch, you know. So, yeah, I'm worried about OJ Howard dipping into that at some point. But, man, he just doesn't seem to ever really get that opportunity. So maybe it is just Gronk. And I think we'll know sooner than later.
So, obviously, you're going to start everyone on the Bucs. That's no question. What's going to tell you if you should start anybody on Atlanta is this. Did you see the inside-out 7-man front that the Bucs ran last week?
Not off the top of my head, I'm not thinking about it.
7-man defensive front, Sue and Vea on the outside, then Barrett and Tryon on the inside of them, White, David, and JPP over center.
Jesus.
5 rush, 2 drop.
Oh my God.
What do you do?
Pray.
Right?
I mean, come on.
Throw it away.
Like, and we saw what happened last week. The Falcons rookie guard not talking trash on Fletcher Cox, but saying how he's confident in his abilities. Fletcher Cox is a great player, but I know what I can do. Is that Jalen Mayfield got wrecked? They ran over that offensive line last week, and I know the Eagles have a pretty good front four, but they were only rushing 4, and they were still getting sacks. The Bucs are going to crush them.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
So I'm not in on anybody with the Falcons. If I had to play somebody in a flex, and that's the best I would do, obviously other than Pitts or Ridley, right? We know those ones. Cordero Patterson, I think, could be a sneaky play if you were desperate. Last week, 7 carries, 54 yards,
Let him
and then
rush
2 receptions, 13 yards receiving. That could be the play because he can dump out quick and he can catch the ball very well. Much
He's
better
a
than
big
Mike
guy
Davis.
too.
He's
got good
pretty
size.
big. So Mike Davis is good, don't get me wrong, but if you have that 7-man front in front of you, I want Cordero Patterson because he can theoretically block somebody, but he could also dump out wide real quick and I can just get it out to him. I don't have to worry about making a read. I just throw it to him and let him take the hit.
Yeah, they're
Because
going to
I'm
need
Matt
that.
Ryan. I want none of that fire. But with that being said, it takes us to the team that had to face that 7-man front last week. The Dallas Cowboys 0-1 going up against these, I almost said San Diego, the Los Angeles Chargers 1-0. Chargers favored by 3.5, over under of 55 points. This is a bit of an interesting one. I think we take the over. That's not a question, right? I think this is going to be a complete shootout. Justin Herbert versus Dak Prescott. Herbert last week, 31 out of 47, 337 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He did have a fumble, which was not a fumble. Not sure if you guys saw that one.
Yeah,
He
ridiculous.
Definitely looked like he was throwing the ball, and it popped out 15 yards downfield into the end zone for a touchback.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't like it.
Yeah. So I think that he got hit a little bit on fantasy for that. But otherwise, a pretty decent game. Could have used some extra touchdowns. Austin Eckler, 15 carries for 57 and a touchdown. Nothing outstanding, but could be worse. The big thing for him is he didn't have a reception.
Yeah, it's odd.
Is that not his job?
Yeah, that's where we thought he would be the most valuable.
So definitely drops him down my board a little bit. That's a bit concerning. He had a touchdown last week, so still viable, but definitely a concern. Larry Roundtree had 8 carries, by the way, only 27 yards, but got a little bit of volume. And then receiving, obviously, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams are studs. Jared Cook, 5 for 56, not terrible. And Jalen Guyton and KJ Hill in limited work, not too terrible. So they do have some guys that can make some catches when need be, but I don't think that they're volume guys. I don't think they're guys you really want to play. Cowboys, on the other hand, the 3-headed monster a little bit broken up because Michael Gallup, it sounds like, is out. So it's Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and then is it Cedric Wilson, I believe, is now wide receiver 3. Not ideal, in my opinion. So Amari and CeeDee, I think those are your plays. Dak, obviously a big one. But Zeke, did I not tell you guys? I was telling you guys before last season, and then I told you before this season. He is trending down, averaging 3 yards a carry this week. 11 carries, 33 yards. And by the way, he only had 2 catches for 6 yards. That is terrible, my guys. And did I not tell you that's what we could expect? Maybe not that extreme, but
for that matchup, I see it.
Yeah.
For me, I'm definitely going the Chargers and the over. This is going to be high-scoring game. But Herbert's too much. What he did to Washington last week is really undersung. That was a great defense. He just did that too. The Cowboys do not have a great defense. I think it's Herbert, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. Both of those guys are going to get double-digit targets. I think Eckler is very viable through the air this week. I think they get him going in what he's supposed to be. They don't need to run him, really. He's more of a glorified receiver as it is. Use him as it. And then on the other side, my gosh, this is another game I really want a lot of. Dak all day, Cooper all day, Lamb all day. And I'm going to take Zeke all day this week. I think they game plan specifically for Tampa Bay not to run the ball. They're going to do the opposite this week and try to establish the run, a way more balanced attack against the Chargers defense that's more vulnerable to the run. Again, Cedric Wilson too, there's a real good argument that you can stream that guy this week or use him in DFS because his price point's going to be low. And if they really focus on stopping those top two, you saw that Wilson has opportunities. And the last thing too, I was really interested to see between Schultz and Jarwin, which guy was going to kind of emerge. And to me, it was a no-brainer. Schultz was the guy that I want moving forward in this offense. If you have Schultz and Jarwin, I think you can safely cut Jarwin moving forward unless Schultz gets injured. Schultz is the tight end one there from what I could tell last week.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Dalton Schultz. I've got a handful of shares of him just because of the Blake Jarwin injury last year, and I needed a tight end. So it was really kind of a nice, pleasant surprise to see him come into the year and kind of take a stranglehold of that job. I think the Cowboys win this game. I'll take them, plus 3.5. And the over at 55 seems really enticing. And I think this game ultimately turns into a shootout. The Cowboys just lost DeMarcus Lawrence today in practice to a broken foot. That's going to be an issue if you can't get to Justin Herbert. And I just don't know if this Chargers defense is going to be able to stop the Cowboys. Really, last week, them losing that game the way they did is kind of a win. They were supposed to lose that game. The way they battled showed me this Cowboys team might actually be legit. I'm not buying Zeke. I'm out on Zeke. Tom, I'm jumping on board with you, man. Mike McCarthy has shown us year after year after year why to not want his running back in fantasy. And 11 carries for Zeke week 1 in a battle with the Buccaneers just seems negligent to me. And I don't know why he would change up now. He's shown us who he is over and over. I'm just not excited for the way this offense looks. It's very, very, very pass happy. What do you got, Tom?
I was going to say, even if he gets the touches, I just don't think Zeke is efficient enough at this point in his career. I think he is he's a good running back still, but he's on the downhill, and you're still not going to see the 4+ yards per carry that you really want to see out of that RB1. He's now an RB2, even pushing towards flex territory and efficiency. If he gets 27 carries a game and 10 receptions, obviously, then great, running back 1. But he won't get that, and he's not efficient enough to make up for it.
Yeah, and another problem, too, is Zeke's not one of those guys that's at 11 carries. He's going to really do anything for you. He's an 18, 22, 24 carry guy. Yeah, he's the fourth quarter after he's been banging on you all day is when Zeke's a problem. And if they're only going to give the guy 11 carries, it's going to be really, really hard for him to get going. Another concern that I have with the running game in the Cowboys offense is Dak Prescott was second in the NFL in red zone completions last week, and he was third in the NFL in red zone pass attempts last week. 9 pass attempts in the red zone. And Zeke's nowhere to be found on the red zone carries list. So that's not a good sign. That's showing you what they're trying to do with their bread and butter. It doesn't look good for Zeke right now. However, it is just week 1. I'll temper that back a slight bit. However, I'm not that confident in my lineups where I have Zeke that I'm getting what that name value makes me feel like when I'm plugging him in to that starting roster spot.
Real quick, last thing is the only benefit for Zeke in the red zone is with Gallup being out, it is 1 less target. So I think you're less likely to run 3 wide out there. Mm-hmm. I mean, you only played 4 receivers in the last game, or had targets to 4 receivers in the last game. I doubt that they're going to expand upon that, and now you're already bringing in an extra receiver to do that because Gallup's out. I think Zeke does take a little bit of precedence over them, but it's very clear that the receivers are the priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of the ball, Justin Herbert, Brian, what he did against Washington's defense leading them to that win last week, he had to make some pretty damn good throws. This kid is incredible. The Chargers, they got a really solid player, and they led the NFL in attempts in the red zone, but at the same time, Austin Eckler also led in red zone rushing attempts. Only got in 1 out of 7 attempts in the red zone running the ball, but that's what you like to see out of a guy, but it's still a little bit of an underwhelming day from Austin Eckler. However, Mike Williams, guys, you Mike Williams truthers out there, finally got your guy, showed up for you. I think Herbert continues to make this guy ascend. He's way too talented to be kind of the dull fantasy asset that we've seen him be over the last few years. It's really refreshing to see him get going. And Keenan Allen, still probably the most underrated route runner in the NFL. Jesus, that guy is just amazing, and what he does for Justin Herbert is incredible. I hope these guys can stay healthy and grow together. I like Larry Roundtree because I don't think Eckler is going to be able to handle the workload for very long, and I think they like what they saw out of the kid. He's a good player. They've liked him all summer. They've been touting him. So that's a guy I'm adding in leagues where, hey, this guy wasn't quite what I thought. The opportunity wasn't there. Or maybe you need a running back. Larry Roundtree's a guy that you can add, that his role in this offense is going to grow, and he's going to get some shots in the red zone to maybe sneak in a touchdown. They like him a lot. He's a guy I'm eyeballing. Not playing him necessarily this week. However, stash him, hold on to him for a minute. I like that going on. I like what the Chargers got going on, but I think the Cowboys get back on track, like I said. You guys got anything else on that one?
Rockstar.
All right. That takes us to the Tennessee Titans, traveling out west to Seattle. The 1-0 Seattle Seahawks, favored by 5.5, over under a 54. I like Seattle and the under, and here's why. The way Seattle got to Carson Wentz last week, I mean, he got hit all day long, you guys. And that's exactly what happened to Tennessee last week in their matchup as well with the Arizona Cardinals. Tannehill got sacked 5 times. The way the Seahawks are playing, the way the Titans looked last week, this might be ugly. 0-2 for the Titans and the Colts, making the AFC South kind of a battle where the Houston Texans are going to be probably leading that division coming out of week 2, in my opinion, before the Colts and Titans really catch traction here. Seahawks look like a buzzsaw. Russell Wilson's always a real problem late, and I didn't like what I saw to Derrick Henry, AJB, or Julio last week, and mostly that was because Tannehill was on his back. They got a big task ahead of them to get that fixed in 1 week after Seahawks defense that's got a ton of confidence after they got after the quarterback at will last week against the Colts. So from a fantasy standpoint, you got to start your Titans. Where you draft them, you got to have them. But temper expectations, in my opinion. And I'm looking for a Chris Carson game, really kind of have that day that shows you why you drafted him as that later round guy that you're still plugging in as an RB2. And really, DK Metcalf to get back on track. The Colts really made an effort to shut him down, and Lockett ended up getting him burned a couple times. But I think the Seahawks get back on track in a big way against the Titans, who are really underwhelming right now in every aspect of the game.
So real quick on the Seahawks front there, Rashad Penny did not practice today due to a calf injury, and Chris Carson limited practice to rest. He's a veteran. But the Seahawks obviously played out well last week. Russell Wilson, 18 for 23, 254 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, there's not much better of a stat line than that. Sure, you want to go for 300 yards, but 4 TDs and you barely had any incompletions. I'll take that all day. Obviously, Chris Carson, 16 for 91, good game. Would have loved a touchdown in there. 3 receptions did help out for that, but leaves you wanting a little bit. Dwayne Eskridge, 2 rushes for 22, by the way. Love to see that. Only 1 catch, though. And then Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, obviously studs. And then the one thing, Gerald Everett. We talked about Gerald Everett being a quality tight end in Seattle. Did get the touchdown. Obviously, only 2 catches for 20 yards with that touchdown. So, again, leaving a little bit for want. But these tight ends, 5 or 6 touchdowns on the season, 500 yards, and 40, 50 receptions. You're into tight end 1 territory. It doesn't take a ton. So, definitely, I think, on track for that with an early touchdown in the season. Titans, on the other hand, again, one of those most efficient quarterbacks, Matthias Farley, 1 for 1, 6 yards. He's a safety. Love it on the fake punt. But Ryan Tannehill, 21 for 35. He was getting harassed all game. 5 sacks from Chandler Jones. So definitely, you got behind early, so you couldn't just pound the ball with Derrick Henry. That is with Derrick Henry, if you're ahead, he's going to get the ball 30 times a game, and they're going to run it up the, whoever it is throat, and you're going to get all the fantasy points in the world. If the Titans are behind, Derrick Henry's going to have a bad day because he's not going to get those touches. You have to throw the ball. Last week, they couldn't do it, and I will say I'm not sure that they'll be able to do it this week, so I am a little concerned about Derrick Henry leading into this week. I think they're going to try and start off strong this week. I wish you could select your starting lineup based on who wins a coin toss, because if the Titans win and they get the ball, I want Derrick Henry because I think they're going to feed it to him, march downfield, and try and score. If they don't get the ball, I think they're behind early, and you're in trouble. AJB hoping for a better week. I don't think they're going to see quite the pressure they did last week. Chester Rogers came out of nowhere. Julio Jones, not much of a factor either last week. So again, hoping that changes with a little bit different defense and a bit less pressure. But yeah, Derrick Henry, like I said, I am a little concerned about him. So, I'll let you marinate on that.
I have no such concerns. I think this is a super high scoring game. I'll take the Titans in the over. I think the Titans are going to win a close one here. They're going to be able to run effectively. I think they learned their lesson last week. They gave up the run too easy. It sets everything up for them. And Chandler Jones really had a monster day. That had a lot to do with it. I love AJB, Tanny, and Henry, the trio this week. I think AJB is going to benefit a lot from the effective run game. I also love on the other side, I love Russ, DK, and Lockett. Lockett went off last week, though, so I expect a bit lower output this week. And then Carson's always a play. This is a game I want a lot of exposure to. I don't think they're going to be able to stop each other because I do think we see, for a lot of the same reasons, Tannehill was out with COVID for the last part of preseason. They're a little rusty and off timing. Once they get everything going, this is one of the most talented teams. These are two of the most talented teams offensively in the league. So I expect a barn burner, and I think the Titans get the win and try to right the ship a little bit. And the Seahawks play a good game. I just don't think that they're quite as talented. When both teams are playing at their peak efficiency, I think the Titans are superior. Y'all have anything else you want to add about that game?
No, man.
All right, we're moving on to our Sunday night game. Chiefs, Ravens. Chiefs favored by 3.5. The over-under is 55. I'll do Chiefs and over. A lot of that has to do with some injuries for Baltimore, but I love Mahomes and Tyreek and Kelsey. Duh. Like, those guys are unstoppable. It's going to be an every week thing. I may stop saying it just because it's so understood. I'm not that huge on CEH this week because I don't think they're going to be able to pound the ball really against this defense. But on the opposing side, my God, I love Lamar Jackson this week. He maybe end up being my QB1 this week because you saw what happened when they lacked don't get me wrong. I like Tyson Williams is good and I'm going to use him. But Lamar had to do more. And I was talking briefly to Tom right when I first got on. That's the best I've seen of Lamar in his career, in my opinion, from the eyeball test. And Tom was correcting me and saying, hey, some of his stats weren't quite as good. And I'm saying, look, I'm just telling you what I saw with my own eyes is a Lamar that I like that version of him the best.
It's a mixed bag when you look at it, really.
Yeah, his legs are obviously such a strength, and if he can throw relatively effectively, I think he did last game. I thought he was relatively effective. I love it. I also love Hollywood. We saw what could happen with him. I know quite a few of us wound up with him in a lot of rosters where we went heavy RB. I think that's going to pay off this year. He had a big game. I see more big games moving forward. Andrews is going to score again. That's just what happens. The guy just finds the end zone. So, again, another game I want a lot of exposure to. I think they cracked the over pretty easy, and Lamar is likely going to be the fantasy MVP of this game just because Tyreek and Kelsey kind of cap what each other can do. And obviously you have Mahomes and love Mahomes, but he doesn't offer the same kind of rushing upside that Lamar has. I love Lamar this week. Probably the first time I've ever said that, honestly.
So we all know the guys of the Chiefs, the big three like you talked about, Ryan, but the Chiefs really do need to find that wide receiver too. Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, of course, they get it done, but there are going to be days when they need a little bit of an influence from another weapon in this offense, and hopefully that's McCole Hardman. But man, I am slowly stepping off this boat, you guys. I've loved this guy the last couple years, really had high hopes, but the more and more he gets an opportunity, the more and more you just don't see it happening. And CEH out of the backfield really needs to come alive for everybody. That just where you invested in him, he's a mid-late second-round pick in some leagues, so that's a guy you're expecting pretty big things out of. He missed 4 games last year, was still RB22. The talent is there, but it just doesn't seem like they really ever use him in any way that he's going to catch any kind of rhythm. Seems really random, like they haven't quite figured out what they want to do with him yet. So I'm hoping that comes around. But on the Ravens side of the ball, I like that Tyson Williams a lot. That run he had in the middle of that game the other night was pretty impressive and got me pretty excited. But then coming out in the second half, he only had a couple touches, so I'm not sure what's up with that. Latavius Murray looked pitiful bad, so I just can't believe that they felt like he was their best opportunity to move the ball, but maybe there's something to the story. We don't know. He did have 2 near fumbles. That may have been part of the reason why he got to chill out for a little bit, but the Ravens are going to struggle to run the ball the way that they like to, and I imagine there's a lot of trial and error in the next few weeks out of this team, but I like Hollywood Brown a lot, like you said, Ryan. Sammy Watkins, given that other legitimate wide receiver threat, is going to make Hollywood a lot more useful in between the 30s, where we've really seen him just be kind of a deep threat lately. And so I'm really excited about that. Like you said, I ended up with him in a ton of leagues, way late in drafts, as kind of a high upside guy, and I really like what I saw out of the Ravens on offense week 1 concerning Hollywood Brown's usage.
So I'll tell you what, with Lamar, as I look into it more, Ryan, especially, we talked about this in a game that went to overtime and was quite the shootout, honestly, right? Like this was a shootout throughout the game. I don't like his stats as much. I mean, the eye test, it didn't look bad, right? He wasn't making poor choices, right? Theoretically. You only made 30 pass attempts in a shootout. You completed 19, not terrible. 235 yards and a touchdown. I don't know. It just seems like you're not throwing the ball that much for a game that was 33-27 in overtime. And then when you go into the rushing yards, 12 carries, 86 yards. You didn't have a running back.
Yeah,
I mean, you
still
don't have a running
roster,
back.
though.
So, like, you still have the same roster, but it is a little concerning to me, right? Going forward into the season. Obviously, now you bring in Le'Veon Bell, you brought in Latavius Murray, and I'm blanking on the last one, but
Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, Freeman. Thank you. You brought in 3 running backs, and they're saying that they're going to use all of them, as well as Tyson Williams and Trenton Cannon and everyone. But a little concerning. What we talked about pre-show was Ryan was talking about how it seemed like he was completing a lot more passes. It really wasn't, throwing bad balls, and he was a lot more accurate. Obviously, we're talking about one game versus full seasons here, so a little bit of a grain of salt. But his bad throw percentage last night was a 20.7%, or excuse me, on Monday night was 20.7%. Over his 2019 and 2020 seasons, about 17.5, 17.6% bad throw percentage. His on-target percentage, 72.4% on Monday night versus 76 and 75.3% over the last 2 seasons. And even his completion percentage was 63.3 on Monday versus 64.4 and 66.1 over the last 2 seasons. So while the eye test seems like he's making better plays, which is very possible, right? I haven't fully gotten a chance to break down that game, but the stats are saying it's not that great a game, right? It's even actually a little bit worse than what we've expected from Lamar Jackson passing the ball historically. So I am still holding out a little bit, maybe making a few less poor decisions, but aside from that, on the Ravens, honestly, there's not many people I want in this game, especially going up against the Chiefs. I think it's going to be, if I had to guess, the Lamar show, because he's going to run for 100 yards probably. But we all know how Ryan and I feel about when's he going to get hurt. So that's my only concern. The receivers, it's probably Watkins and Brown if I had to guess. Andrews did not impress me last week, which is disappointing for a lot of people. For the Chiefs, obviously Patrick Mahomes, CEH, Tyreek, and Travis Kelce. I was hoping it was Hardman. I still think it could be, but they really just don't have somebody after the first 2, and then it was CEH got 3 and Hardman got 3, and CEH was far more effective with his 3 receptions than Hardman. So I'm not sold on who's going to be the true second receiver there. Anything else on that one?
No, go ahead, man.
All right. Jumping into the Monday night matchup here. Lions 0-1 going into Green Bay facing the Packers 1-0. That can't be right. Packers are 0-1, aren't they?
Yes.
We're going to correct that real quick. Packers are 0-1. They did not win last week. Aaron Rodgers getting benched. I was a bit surprised by that. I don't know about you guys, even with his poor play. But with that being said, I don't expect that to last. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a much better game this week, especially against a bad Lions offense. I think, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, both viable. A.J. Dillon a little bit touchdown dependent, but I mean, against a Lions defense, you could see him get some garbage time and goal line touches. Devontae Adams, again, going to have a good week. Even Randall Cobb could be a pretty solid option. He got 1 touch for 32 yards last week. Not crazy, but enough. for the Lions, I don't really want anybody. Jared Goff went 38 for 57 last week against the Niners. That's what you expect in shootout numbers, by the way. What I would have hoped, maybe not 57 passes for Lamar, but 40 or 50. 338 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jamal Williams looked pretty good. DeAndre Swift limited touches, 11 carries and 39 yards, but not great, not terrible. He did have 8 receptions for 65 yards, though, so he was very relevant. TJ Hawkinson looked good. Jamal Williams, 8 receptions as well. A lot to like. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, good rookie start as well.
Yeah, for me, oh my goodness, this is a vengeance game. This is going to be a game I want all the Packers. Aaron Jones in everything. Rodgers in everything. Adams too. That's going to be building my lineups with those 3 guys built around it. This is going to get ugly. Pack and over. The Packers this week, you want this. Last week, Rodgers never played in the preseason. Everybody was off. That was pathetic. They're going to come back and prove that was a spoof and that wasn't real. On the other side, I like Goff still. I like Hawkinson in this matchup. The Packers are going to blow him up, but the Lions are going to try to keep up. And then you like Swift and Williams both being viable with both of them having all those catches. The receivers did not much for me. And you look at the target share, they did not have a high target share. It was the running backs and the tight ends. And I think that's going to be a trend moving forward. I'm into both Swift and Williams for their pass catching upside here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Ryan. I really feel like week 1 was a microcosm of what we're going to see this Lions offense be. They're very underwhelming at the wide receiver position, and I think that throwing the ball to the running back is how they plan on getting by. Obviously, the Saints' influence on this offense, they played that to a T. Excuse me. Both running backs having 8 receptions last week gives them an incredible floor on just PPR alone, and splitting carries damn near right down the middle. So really, Jamal Williams, an incredible value. And DeAndre Swift, you're maybe a little bit disappointed with how this has worked out so far, and I don't see it changing. Jamal Williams played well. You could even argue outplayed DeAndre Swift in some aspects. So I do think that's what you're going to get out of the Lions. Hawkinson, Goff, no Lions for me after that moving forward. I think the backs is going to be a hit or miss whether or not they're productive, and I think it's going to depend on linebacker play that they see along the way. The Packers are coming for blood. Last week, really disappointing start to their year and really took a lot of heat because of it. Aaron Rodgers shouldering a lot of that blame, saying that, he needed to play better and those kind of things. When you hear that out of Aaron Rodgers' mouth, whoever they play next is in big, big trouble. I think the Lions get tore up in every aspect. And I'm going to give you a little nugget. If you need a flex guy or just need a boom or bust to beat the lineup that you're matched up against this week, play MVS. The guy's a deep threat. He's going to get a couple big ones in this game against this Lions secondary. No Jeff Okudah. They're going to have their hands full with Devontae Adams just to start. MVS is going to get lost in the scrum of all the bigger names on this team. And Aaron Jones, I think, gets back on track after disappointing fantasy owners in week 1. He always shreds the Lions, and I think this week's going to be no different.
Billy, I'm glad you pointed that out. I almost forgot. Detroit's cornerbacks this week are Amani Oruwariye, and then 3 rookies in Ifatu Melifanu. I think I said that close.
Hey, there's an Iowa boy there, but he can't guard Devontae, though.
Jerry Jacobs and A.J. Parker. I mean, you got 3 rookies, and your number 1 in Amani Oruwariye is not a veteran by any means. So
does Devontae break the reception record in this game?
Yeah, it's possible.
It's very possible.
Well, they could spread it out just because there's so few.
Everybody gets 100 yards
out there.
It could be one of those days.
Talk about their safeties too. It's Will Harris and Tracy Walker.
Yeah,
it's not like they're studs either. This is an ugly defensive backfield. Aaron Rodgers might come out. He might have just been pissed off last week and said, "I'm going to give us a loss just to screw with you guys." And then I'm going to come out against the Lions and just light it up for 500 yards and
if you're the
7
Lions,
touchdowns.
You're just holding on for dear life.
Yeah. Jared Goff is – what did he throw last week? What did I say, 57 attempts? Yeah, 57 attempts. He's going to throw 74 this week. So.
Yeah.
You're going to need him.
Rough. Yeah. They're not going to run the ball once. He's just going to be throwing that thing like crazy.
It's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
But
Week 2, man.
Week 2, I'm excited for
baby.
it. It's going to be a fun one. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Really quick, tell them where they can follow you. We had a couple people asking, for advice on rosters, right? Who they should start, who they should sit. Where can they ask us that so we can go in depth with them?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Real Ryan Hicks, or easier to find me on Sleeper at Ryan Hicks 63. That's where I'm always at, checking and fiddling with lineups and just checking on my teams. Really excited. The St. Jude Bowl's up and running. Like you saw from the beginning, we got to announce the leaders there, and I'm just excited. I'm winning this thing. Even though I lost in week 1, I'm still going to win this sucker. I have my eye on the prize. So you can find us there. And again, yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. It's fun. It's football season, baby.
You can find me on Twitter at bwit24. Hit me up for any lineup questions, start set advice. I'll tell you what I think. And hey, join us for the St. Jude Bowl next year. If you're not tuned in, we'll keep an eye on everybody and how they're doing as well. For those of you that have participated with us this year, but leading into week 2, let's just emphasize some things. The first couple weeks are always screwy, people. So if your studs aren't working out, don't bail yet. We get a few more weeks into the season, they're not producing. We'll get that figured out then. Until then, keep playing your guys. Maybe a couple matchup-based changes, but keep plugging away right now and be active on your waiver wire.
Yeah, and as always, at FFR Tom, you can reach me, and then you can reach all of us at Fantasy FR Live. What I'd say is tag all of us at Fantasy FR Live, at FFR Tom, at Real Ryan Hicks, and at BWit24 on Twitter. That way, we can all kind of jump in and make sure we get you the best advice we can on any of your start sit questions, trades, anything like that. We're happy to help. But as always, we want to thank you for tuning in. Week 2, it's an exciting week. We're starting to roll with the season, and we can't wait to join you guys for week 3 here.
Yeah. Sayonara, guys.
It's